This speech changed everything. Steve Jobs, a man who redefined innovation, began with a simple yet profound statement. He didn't start with grand promises or flashy introductions. Instead, he shared 3 personal stories, each one a lesson in resilience, passion, and purpose. Today, I want to tell 3 stories from my life. Just 3 stories, no big deal. The first one is about connecting the dots. I dropped out of Reed College after just 6 months, but I didn't quit right away. I stayed for another 18 months as a drop-in student. So why did I drop out? Well, it started even before I was born. My biological mother was a young, unwed graduate student. She decided to put me up for adoption. She had a clear wish. I should be adopted by college graduates. Everything was set. I was supposed to be adopted at birth by a lawyer and his wife. But when I was born, they decided at the last minute that they really wanted a girl. My parents, who were on a waiting list, got a call in the middle of the night. "We've got an unexpected baby boy. Do you want him?" They said yes, of course. My biological mother later found out that my mother had never graduated from college, and my father hadn't even finished high school. She was upset. She refused to sign the final adoption papers. A few months later, my parents promised me something. I would go to college. And so, 17 years later, I did. I went to college. But here's the thing. I naively picked a college almost as expensive as Stanford. My working-class parents had saved everything they could to help me pay for it. After just 6 months, I couldn't see the point of it. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I had no idea how college could help me figure it out. And yet, there I was, burning through my parents' entire life savings. So I made a decision. I dropped out. I trusted that it would all work out somehow. It was scary, but looking back now, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. The minute I dropped out, I was free. I didn't have to take those boring required classes anymore. I could drop in on the ones that really interested me. Sure, it wasn't glamorous. Didn't have a dorm room. I slept on the floors of friends' rooms. I returned Coke bottles for 5-cent deposits to buy food. Every Sunday night, I walked 7 miles across town just to have one good meal at the Hare Krishna temple. I loved it, and much of what I stumbled into, just by following my curiosity, turned out to be priceless later on. Let me give you an example. Reed College back then had possibly the best calligraphy instruction in the country. Every poster, every label on every drawer was beautifully hand-lettered. Because I dropped out and wasn't bound by the normal curriculum, I decided to take a calligraphy class. I learned about serif and sans serif fonts, about adjusting space between letters, and about what makes great typography great. It was beautiful, subtle, and artistic in a way that science couldn't explain. I found it fascinating. At the time, it seemed useless. But 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, it all came back to me. We designed the Mac with beautiful typography. The first computer to ever have multiple typefaces and proportional fonts. If I hadn't taken that calligraphy class, the Mac would have never had that typography. And since Windows copied the Mac, it's likely that no personal computer would have it either. If I had never dropped out, I would have never dropped in on that class. And personal computers might not have the beautiful fonts they do today. It's impossible to connect the dots looking forward. But looking back, it's so clear. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma. Because trusting that the dots will connect later on will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the beaten path. And that's what makes all the difference. My second story is about love and loss, 2 powerful forces that have shaped my life in ways I never expected. I was lucky. I found what I loved to do early in life. When I was just 20, I started Apple in my parents' garage. We worked hard, long hours with nothing but a dream. And in 10 years, Apple grew from just the 2 of us in that small garage to a $2 billion company with over 4,000 employees. It was incredible. We had just released the Macintosh, a product I was immensely proud of, a year earlier. I had just turned 30, And then, out of nowhere, I got fired. How can you get fired from the company you started? Well, as Apple grew, we hired someone I thought was very talented to run the company with me. For the first year or so, things went well. But over time, our visions for the future began to diverge. Eventually, we had a falling out. And when we did, the board of directors sided with him. Just like that, I was out. At 30, I was publicly out of the very company I had founded. What had been the focus of my entire adult life was suddenly gone. And it was devastating. I didn't know what to do with myself. For months, I felt like I had let down the previous generation of entrepreneurs. Like I had dropped the baton as it was being passed to me. I even met with David Packard and Bob Noyce to apologize, thinking I had messed everything up. I was a very public failure, and the thought of leaving Silicon Valley crossed my mind. But then, slowly, something began to dawn on me. I still loved what I did. The turn of events at Apple had not changed that one bit. I had been rejected, but I was still in love with what I did. And that love, it was the one thing that kept me going. So I decided to start over. I didn't see it at the time, but getting fired from Apple was the best thing that ever happened to me. The weight of being successful, of living with the expectations of others, was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again. I was less sure about everything, but that uncertainty gave me the freedom to be creative. And it opened the door to one of the most exciting, innovative periods of my life. Over the next 5 years, I started a company called Next and another called Pixar. And during this time, I also fell in love with an amazing woman who would later become my wife. Pixar went on to create the world's first computer-animated feature film, Toy Story. And now, Pixar is the most successful animation studio in the world. In an incredible twist of fate, Apple eventually bought Next, and I returned to the company I had founded. The technology we developed at Next is now at the heart of Apple's incredible renaissance. Lorraine and I have a wonderful family now, and when I look back, I'm pretty sure none of this would have happened if I hadn't been fired from Apple. It was painful, awful-tasting medicine, really, but I guess the patient needed it. Sometimes, life's going to hit you in the head with a brick. It's going to hurt, but don't lose faith. I'm convinced the only thing that kept me going was that I loved what I did. Love kept me going, and love is what you need to keep going too. You've got to find what you love. That's as true for your work as it is for your relationships. Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you'll know when you find it. And like any great relationship, it just gets better and better as the years roll on. So keep looking. Don't settle. My third story is about death. And it might sound strange, but I think it's one of the most important lessons I've learned in life. When I was 17, I came across a quote that stuck with me. It went something like this: "If you live each day as if it were your last, someday you'll most certainly be right." That quote left a mark on me. From that moment on, for the past 33 years, every single morning, I've looked in the mirror and asked myself one question. If today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? And you know what? Whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know it's time to change something. Because remembering that you're going to die soon, it's the most powerful tool I've ever had for making big decisions. It helps cut through all the noise. Almost everything falls away when you face death. The fear of what others think, the pride, the embarrassment, the fear of failure, those things, they lose their grip. What's left is what truly matters. Thinking about your own death, that unavoidable truth, it makes it so much easier to stop worrying about losing anything. Because in reality, you have nothing to lose. You're already naked. And once you realize that, it becomes so much easier to follow your heart. You see, no one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven, they don't want to die to get there. And yet, death is the destination we all share. There's no way out of it. And that's okay. Because death is, in a way, the best invention of life. It's life's great change agent. It clears out the old to make room for the new. Right now, the new is you. But someday, not too long from now, you'll slowly become the old. and eventually you'll be cleared away. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's true. Your time is limited. So, here's my advice. Don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't let yourself be trapped by dogma. Don't let yourself live based on the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most importantly, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They already know what you truly want to become. Everything else? It's secondary. Stay hungry. Stay foolish. Now, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned today. Steve Jobs' journey teaches us that sometimes life setbacks can be the very thing that sets us up for something greater. From being fired from the company he created, to reinventing himself and changing the world with Next and Pixar, he proved that passion, resilience, and the willingness to follow your heart can lead to extraordinary success. His story reminds us that the most important thing in life is to love what you do, and that the true path to greatness lies in embracing the unknown and trusting that the dots will connect along the way. Remember, the challenges you face today may one day turn into the stepping stones that guide you to your greatest achievements. Keep following your heart, stay curious, and never settle. Stay tuned for more inspiring stories in our upcoming videos. Don't forget to share and hit subscribe to spread this inspiration to even more people. Wishing you nothing but the best in your journey ahead.